Hello, I'm Dr. Garrett Boyer. Welcome to Gospel Minded, where we spend a few minutes each week talking about psychology, emotions, behavioral health, and we reflect on how these important topics are related to the gospel reading for each Sunday. Now, like I point out every week, this isn't any kind of substitute for actually getting yourself to church or engaging in therapy or counseling, perhaps spiritual direction if you're participating in these sort of practices. But like we know so well and like we've seen, things of our psychology, things of our mind, so often go beautifully hand in hand with our spirituality. If you're new to Gospel Minded, welcome. Please take a minute to subscribe so you'll never miss an update. Now, for this Sunday, we're continuing along in John's Gospel from chapter 6. But boy, was I encouraged and enthusiastic about all three of the readings for today. The first reading from Proverbs, the second reading from St. Paul's letter, the Psalm, and then the Gospel. There's such a rich and beautiful continuity. And I was thinking to myself during Mass this morning, boy, if I were a preacher, this would be like a homiletics playground, because there is such a profound richness of the three texts today for Mass. So if you were distracted or didn't really catch all three readings together, I encourage you to go back and have a look, because boy, they just pair so beautifully together, and that dialogue between wisdom and foolishness, and then how it relates to this part of the gospel reading from John's text. Really great stuff. So, I'm not a preacher. I'm not going to preach theologically, but do know that I thought that the readings today were so theologically rich. What I want to focus on psychologically, though, is this passage from John's Gospel, which says that as Jesus was talking to the Jews, the people gathered, they were quarreling among themselves. Jesus was controversial to those who were hearing him, and so they started to quarrel among themselves, arguing, debating, infighting, this kind of stuff. Remember last week I talked about grumbling and arguing and chronic negativity, those sort of things. We highlighted that last week. And now this week, the gospel uses that really fascinating word. They quarreled among themselves. It made me stop and think, how often are we quarreling among ourselves, with people in our own family, with people at work? We can be quarrelsome quite a bit. And so I wanted to address today some ideas about conflict and fair fighting, and what we do when we are quarreling with people that we are engaged with, be they family members or friends, colleagues. There are some principles to fair fighting, and I think when we establish in our minds and in our relationships rules for quarreling, fair fighting, there have to be some essential principles kind of set up. And the one is that conflict in interpersonal relationships is acceptable, and it's a normal part of being in a relationship in our inherited condition as fallible humans. Conflict is, in a sense, unavoidable, and if we're around people, we're probably going to have some disagreements from time to time. And that's okay. It is acceptable to be in disagreement with others. So that's one principle. Another principle, when we establish, like I say, these rules for fair fighting, is that the needs of each person are equally important. And that might be a big pill to swallow if I believe that I am right and somebody else is completely wrong. But truth of the matter is that we need to have this respect that the needs of everybody involved in a quarrel are equally important. And then another thing that's important to recognize when we establish these principles of fair fighting is that it's possible for every party to quote unquote win or quote unquote lose. So as you look at different research and literature talking about the nature of fair fighting and conflict management and conflict resolution, these are three very important principles. This idea that conflict is normal and acceptable, that the needs of every person involved are equally important, and that it's possible for every party to come out successfully, but it's also possible that everybody involved could lose too. So what are some tips that we can take from this? What are some things that we can do if we are engaged in conflict with family members or friends or peers, colleagues at work? You know, if you're married, as I am, you probably have picked up some tricks along the way, because when you are in a married relationship, very easy to find yourselves quarreling sometimes with your significant other. And as you perhaps have known and recognized, you have to go about it a certain way. There's a certain diplomacy that has to be taken into consideration when you're having disputes or arguments, when that quarreling happens. You know, marriage therapists and counselors a lot of times look to John Gottman and the Gottman Institute, because there's been so much literature and so much work done by the Gottmans talking about marriage therapy and that sort of thing. But I think that the guidance that the Gottmans offer is very helpful when you talk about interpersonal relationships just in general. Certainly it's relevant to marriage, but some of the stuff they talk about, I think, has a lot of relevance not only in the context of marriage, but with friends or colleagues, peers, other people that we're connected to. Some of these things, when we talk about conflict management and resolution, I think are universal. So the first thing is this idea of foregoing instant gratification. When we're in the heat of arguments and debates, when we're quarreling, it can be a big temptation to want to feel that gratification when I get that shot in, or when I say that thing that I know is going to push a button, even if I'm right. I want to have that gratification and get that dopamine hit in my head and feel that good feeling like, yeah, I landed my punch. In fair fighting, maybe we need to forego that gratification. And maybe that's going to get us farther in the quarreling process. Maybe it'll be better for the relationship if I can forego that gratification piece. Just something to think about. And I know you know what this is like, because you're a human and you've had arguments with other people, as I have, and we know what it feels like to get that gratification. But when we're in the heat of the moment, is that the best thing for us and for that relationship? Another thing that's important is being able to really express your needs. I'm not a mind reader. My spouse isn't a mind reader, and neither are you or the people that you are connected with. So if you are quarreling or if you are arguing, sometimes it's easy to get into this trap of the silent treatment, and there might be these unspoken parameters that are set up or boundaries that are there but never really discussed or talked about. It's important to really communicate what your desire is, or what your needs are, or what you're wanting to see happen. Communication. Nobody's a mind reader. When we're in the midst of quarrels, we want to make sure that we're managing our strong emotions. Because I get it, when we are passionate and engaged in one of these arguments or debates or something like that, boy, it's really easy to let those big emotions come up. The anger, the rage, the sadness, the disappointment, the hurt, and it all gets sort of woven together in this very intricate and complicated tapestry. But we have to manage that well enough so that the relationship can benefit. And so that in our arguing, this fair fighting model, the relationship can progress and benefit. Not that you can't have emotions, but you have to manage them well enough for the benefit of the relationship. It's important to talk about one thing at a time. It's very easy, again, to go off course and deviate from what you're actually supposed to be talking about to then bring in any other number of infractions or things that have incensed you or upset you. And then when we're talking about things, it's useful to use I statements. I feel like this when that happens, or this makes me feel, or I feel some kind of way, or I think this when whatever is going on. Make it about your own experience subjectively with whatever the situation is. And again, there is no magic formula or blueprint for what every kind of quarrel and argument is going to look like. And truth of the matter is that feelings can get hurt. So what do we do to repair relationships after a fight is over? We need to give the other person and ourselves some time and some space. Very important. Maybe you're the type of person that likes everything to be resolved immediately and just want to get this put behind us, and that's great for you, but maybe the other person needs some time and space. So you have to make sure to give them that space and that time if they need it. We have to allow ourselves to feel our feelings. I just referenced these big emotions. It's okay to feel those things. Yes, we have to manage them, but we also don't want to repress them within ourselves. And we have to find some appropriate way to vent, to let ourselves feel whatever it is that's getting stirred up in the midst of these quarrels. We want to be able to actively listen to the people that we're connected with when we're disputing or arguing, being able to have that listening sense to really hear what they're saying. We need to apologize when it's justified. We say and do things that can really hurt people sometimes. Saying you're sorry will go a long way in repairing damage done in the midst of a fight. And then we can make a plan. We can make a plan for the future. This isn't the last time that you're going to quarrel and argue and fight. What lessons can we take from this time that we can apply next time to make the situation a little less volatile? Boy, I wish that I had all the magic words and all the right answers for what fighting and quarreling is supposed to look like. But truth of the matter is that nobody does. It's a process. It's a journey. These are just some guidances and some tips that I've learned along the way and that my patients have picked up and shared with me along the way. I hope you found them helpful. And I hope that you'll tune in next time to Gospel Minded. This is good stuff, and the Gospels are providing some rich material for us each week now spiritually, but I think this is relevant for us as well psychologically. So I hope to see you next time. Again, like and subscribe. I will be praying for you. I ask you to pray for me. Have a great week. I'm Dr. Garrett Boyer, Gospel Minded. Take care.